This video is going to explain why right now so many powerful people, powerful souls, people who have been on the awakening path for quite some time are having such a challenging time right now in their life, in their awakening. After all that work, your years of shadow work and meditation and healing and doing your best to follow the impulses of your intuition and making sometimes radical changes, you think by now it would have panned out a bit better for you financially, on paper, in your life. Don't you think life is supposed to be a bit more settled now? Why isn't it going smoothly? Why am I continuing to play out old patterns, manifest problems stemming from my unconsciousness? And why is it getting so hard right now? There's a very good reason for that, and I think you already know, but if you don't, then welcome to this video because it's going to explain what I have observed in so many people who are going through this, so many people who relate with everything I just said. And the truth is, it's not that you've taken a wrong turn. It's not that you've made some kind of mistake along the way. It's not that the gods have abandoned you. It's that you've done so much work, just like a higher level student in college. It doesn't get easier for them, does it? They're challenged more and more and more and more and more. Apparently, come to find what we're learning collectively here is so too are the souls. Yeah, you've done a lot of inner work and you've come a long way and you've expanded your consciousness quite a bit. Now you can really handle an accelerated transformation. And that seems to be what exactly is happening in 2026 in particular. Everybody I talk to, people who have been doing the work sometimes for decades, are saying, "Man, Vic, how's it going for you, bro? It's been crazy." I'll hear all these different things, and the same theme is present: is that they're going through like massive transformation. They're being asked once again, maybe for the 20th time, to reinvent themselves again and to start a fresh new chapter, going once again into the unknown. The old is collapsing, the new is yet to present itself as to exactly what it is. All of us feel it means something positive and awesome eventually, but here we are, battling our shadow, waiting for clarity, and it's just been so difficult for so many people. And that's why I'm making this video, to share with you what I've learned in my own life. I've been experiencing this myself. I've talked about it in several of my videos. And I've also, because I coach people, because I talk to so many people who share this path, I've observed that it's not just me and it's not just you. It's a collective thing. And I think it'll bring you a great deal of comfort to really know that. I know it has for me. Seeing my own process sort of mirrored out there in other people who I respect, it allowed me to not falsely think that there's something wrong with me, that I messed up along the way, and that I need to figure it all out. It's more so like, okay, this just seems to be going down right now. It's okay. And it allowed me to really settle more so into like this feeling of faith. One of the things that seems to be happening, and I'm curious if you relate, is that the ego seems to be losing its grip. It almost seems that for a time we were kind of allowed to engage in egoically driven behaviors in our life with less consequences than we have now. Now, when you do almost anything out of fear, out of control, out of resistance, it's like proving to be almost pointless because it just clearly doesn't work. That type of way of life is no longer, there's such a dissonance, I think, between the planet, its current vibration, collective frequency, and that way of going about life. And it's the people who've been doing the work that are able to kind of foresee this. They're seeing, oh, this is no longer allowed or something, it feels like. And I'll give an example. For the longest time, I would do certain things within my business that worked, that were rewarding. There was nothing inherently wrong with them. But as time has gone on, I've seen which ones were not necessarily as connected to my like true purpose in life, like what my soul has come to do, than I thought. But my mind has said, well, you got to do it because this and that and the other, and here's my reasons and this and that. But it's like, nope, it doesn't work anymore. So in this particular area of my business, I experienced just tremendous stress and problem after problem after problem. And for a while I thought, I just got to figure out a better way to do it. It's time to upgrade, time to refine. But the more I tried, the worse the result, the more poor the results would become. And then I had this realization that this is not my purpose. My mind said, well, it is because it's helping people in this particular way. But like deep down, I started to get this sense that this is not as authentic as I thought it was. But there can be this battle, and maybe you can relate as well, where maybe you have drawn this conclusion in your own life, but then that begs the question, well, what do I do? How am I going to support myself, for some of us? And then it's like, well, because I don't see how, in the meantime, I'm going to do what I know works. I'm going to try to double down on old strategies because that makes me feel safe, because that used to work. But the whole game is being flipped upside down. It's changing. And it's a time of it's like foregoing our desperate attempts to maintain control. And there's a good reason for that. And what comes to mind is this poem by William Blake. William Blake is like a late 18th century poet and artist. He's a visionary artist, brilliant, brilliant person. And he was super fond of the human imagination. He's someone who really took it seriously. And it would wear on him as he watched, as like the years would go by, and like the way the world was going. He grew up, he was like in London or England or something, and he just saw where people's heads were at, basically. How what was advancing was like scientific thought, innovation, and more of like the mental aspect of the human being started to kind of control and dominate and advance itself. And he's got this poem with this particular painting that like on one of the pages, and it's of this really, really old person with this long beard, and he's got these two arms, and each arm is writing something, and there's these tombstones behind him, a very kind of heavily symbolic, cryptic, almost eerie looking painting. But it was to kind of demonstrate the collective consciousness in a sense, and how it has become completely mentally, egoically driven. Though advanced, though sophisticated, we can create wonderful buildings and AI and all this other crazy stuff. But nonetheless, there is tombstones right behind us where we're like, there's another part of us that's kind of dying away. And what I think is happening on the planet is that chapter is closing for humanity. And what is being reborn is the part of a psyche that William Blake was so fond of, the imagination, the true self, that light of inspired thought, innovative thinking, the ability to, as he said, see the world in a grain of sand or something like that. Like that's something we can do. We can tune our senses to an extent to where we can perceive the vital life force inherent in everything. And that gives a very, very, very different way of living. And I think we're kind of like, for what it's worth, I think we're kind of heading into that type of where that's the way of the future, whether we like it or not. Even though things seem a certain way, I think that's the way of the future. That's the way to really like continue to like stay like okay in this reality, because that's what's now supported. But for that to happen, it's a nice idea. A lot of you are like, yeah, sign me up, I'm down. Like if right now, if like I had the option to like join up with like-minded people and like live in the woods or something and live very minimally, and I would be down. And you might say that as well. But that's not happening yet. And the reality is our behaviors sometimes say otherwise. While I like that ideal, my behaviors sometimes are part of the old role. I'm that person with the two pens trying to figure everything out, trying to control, trying to force. And what we're finding is like it's like the ego is losing its grip, and it's hard. It's hard. As nice as what I just said sounds, we're facing the reality of just how much of us is still sort of ingrained in this old paradigm of thinking, but yet is breaking away. And what happens when it breaks away, when the familiar breaks away and changes abruptly, coming out of left field like storms on the horizon? We freak out. We go into more control. We double down on old strategies. Hence, this has been hard. It's been a hard time because I've been struggling with letting go so much, because that beautiful future I described is not here yet. There's no even exchange going on. It's just as barely able to detect intuition that this might be why it's happening. Another thing that seems to be happening, and I kind of mentioned it briefly, is destiny seems to be stepping in. Like if your soul came here to do a particular thing, fulfill a particular role or task, there is no longer the option to wait. Even if you still feel frightened of it, unclear of it, you still have lots and lots of blocks as to, well, I don't feel yet confident in my ability to execute this particular role or function in society. Too freaking bad. It's time. You are ready. And that's why it's time, but you might not still feel ready. This has happened with me when it comes to writing my book. And during the sort of breakdown of my business I mentioned, that happened just like, I don't know, 6 months ago, I had this very, very profound dream. And what the dream was, it was me realizing there is this enormous buffalo in my house, and it was wrecking everything. It was just running around almost like it was pissed off, and it was like just destroying my house. But when I woke up, I remembered that the buffalo was white. It was this white buffalo. Now, I'm super into interpreting my dreams. I've been logging my dreams for years. I'm really into studying that. So no one's really an expert, but I've gotten pretty decent, you could say, at deciphering my dreams, and what that plus all the other dreams that kind of supported it were screaming at me was that white buffalo was basically like my higher self or my soul, breaking down everything that is not really connected to what I should be doing with myself, my time, my days, and my life at this time. And for me, it's writing a book. I've been putting it off for so long, and for good reason. It doesn't seem like it's the smart thing to do. You know, I have all my reasons. Regardless, the buffalo is there to say, too bad, I don't care. Your time is up. You either write that book or I'm going to keep ruining your house. That was like the kind of like the vibe of that dream. And I knew it. I woke up and I knew I had been neglecting a very important part of my purpose. There's a part of me that's been dying to express itself in this certain way, but because it scares me, because I'm unfamiliar with this whole thing, and because I don't understand yet how it's going to support me, I've just been kind of brushing it aside. And it would come and go, reminding me, oh, there's this thing you haven't done yet. And the buffalo said, it's time to do that thing. What is your thing? What is it that you have been putting off? What is it that you've known you are to do, but maybe like me, due to fear and whatever, you haven't been? For me, that's when things began to shift. I wouldn't say I'm having a hard time anymore. This was like a peak experience for me where things were just looking horrible in my life on many, many levels. Financially, within my relationships, I felt unfulfilled. I felt drained. I just knew there was an imbalance. This white buffalo dream happened. And then I realized, oh, I have not been living as authentically as I would like to believe. There's something I've been out of fear not doing. And once I committed to writing the book, which I have, things have sort of resolved themselves a lot. Another thing that's happening is a lot of people right now are being called to step up. They're being called to like live and embody and exhibit their true potential, their true power, not just in your particular purpose, as I mentioned, but in all areas of life. No more people pleasing. No more saying yes when you mean no. No more indulging in things that aren't good for you and you know better. It's time to kind of like level up in whatever way that means for you. It's a time to be like decisive. Reminds me of this book I'm reading right now, and it's I can't think of the guy's name, but he's like a sports psychologist. Not a book I would often read. My mom got it for me. Pretty cool book, actually. And he's worked with Michael Phelps, Desmond Howard, Tom Brady. He's like a real high level like sports counselor slash psychologist, something like that. And he was working with this woman who eventually went on to become a very famous volleyball player. I can't recall her name, but apparently when she first attended this college, she was not the person she is today. She was very much stuck in her victim mentality. She was very much driven by her insecurities and her fears and her doubts, and it was kind of sabotaging everything. And as a last ditch effort, she somehow got in with this person, this like coach guy. Um, and he had some very interesting advice for her. Advice that like triggered her and kind of like upset her, and yet was exactly what she needed to hear. And what he said to her, he said, "Your inner child needs to grow up." He said, right now, you're letting your inner child, even though it's valid, even though it's not good to suppress that, it's running the show right now. You're letting your inner child drive the freaking car. And it doesn't know how to drive yet. It's bumping into stuff, getting tickets left and right, endangering people. It's you can't you got to like take the wheel here. And that, I think, is kind of like also one of like the harsh lessons I've also learned from the universe. I've been holding back on doing something I know in my heart I wanted to do out of fear because my inner child didn't feel comfortable with it. And I'm not saying just to shut it out and say just go, go in the trunk or anything. I'm saying like put it in the safely buckle it up in the back seat, saying, listen, we'll talk about this later on. But right now, mom's got to drive. We got somewhere to go. It's like that. It's like stepping up. It's like no longer letting our lower selves, our unresolved wounds, sabotage our life, run the show. And right now, you might be being faced with ways that that's happening. And it's hard to look at. It's like very, very difficult to look at yourself. I'm not preaching to you guys from the mountaintop. I have my own version of this, and it still manifests. In fact, just last night, actually, I was I was so excited to go to this Guns N' Roses concert with my family, and both of my younger boys, for a little while, they like love coming to concerts, but they're like one's 10, one's 12, and they're coming of age where they're starting to kind of like they want, it's like a natural thing to sort of become more autonomous and not just do what dad likes to do. And both of them last night were on the couch saying, I don't want to go to this Guns N' Roses concert. And they were being kind of like grouchy about it. And because I felt so hurt, I felt so like hurt they didn't want to come. I yelled at them and I said, go to your room. We're not watching TV tonight. And my youngest one, he started crying, and I realized I was letting my hurt feelings skew my decision making, and they didn't deserve. They were being kind of like a little bit like testy. A stern warning would have been more fitting, but I lost it because I felt so hurt. The point is, like, afterwards, I felt like such a horrible person. I felt I was so regretful. I felt like, man, you just hurt your children's feelings. You dingbat. Why, you got to get it together. But you know what I did? I went in and I apologized to both of them, even though it was kind of awkward for my 12-year-old, my 10-year-old. We have these certain heart to hearts, but nonetheless, I dealt with it. I said, okay, I owned my mistake. I went and I rectified it as best I could. I apologize. I'm going to learn from it. And that's that. I've moved on. I'm not going to beat myself up over it. But the point is, like, what I'm trying to convey here is like the moment when I finally realized what I was doing, it was like this pit in my stomach. Because earlier on, I felt justified. I felt like, oh, they're being bad. They deserve to go to the room. But it was, nope. I was letting my hurt feelings come out as anger towards the people who I love the most. And once I saw that, oh, it was tough. So for you, the ways in which your inner child, your pain is sort of bleeding out and affecting your life, that also might be hard to look at. It might be a tough pill to swallow. But the universe seems to have grown less and less patient with us. And it's like it's time to stand on our own 2 feet. It's time to own the work we've done. It's time to start conducting ourselves as the conscious co-creators that we in truth are. Right now, also, to your defense, you're probably bumping into a whole bunch of blockages, unresolved pockets of energy being brought up to the surface in unpredictable ways. without warning, at times when it's very inconvenient, basically. And sometimes they don't just come up and out and there it is and there it goes and it's gone. They start to slowly come up and you feel off. I feel more anxious. I feel more exhausted. I feel more just, for me, I get worried. I get like insecure and like, I just get where I feel like unsafe. And it comes up and it just, for maybe a few weeks, you're just off and you're like, when is this going to end? You're looking at the astrology. What's going on with the astrology for Geminis? Oh God. But it's just like this old wound is sort of slowly making its way up and out. But for the duration, it's uncomfortable. It affects pretty much every area of your life, especially your inner world, which of course is directly connected to your outer world and how things are going on the surface. So bumping into these pockets of energy as I speak of is not some metaphorical thing. It's like it's affecting every single part of our life, basically. And when multiple old deep core wounds are kind of coming up to be released, sometimes simultaneously, it's hard. It's not easy. Not easy to like manage your life, manage yourself, manage your relationships, all the while going through this process that it'd probably be better if all of us could like go into a cave to process by ourselves for a couple of months. That would be nice, but it's not. You're on YouTube right now. I'm sitting in front of my camera in my house. It's not happening. Here we are in the real world, doing our best to manage dark nights of the soul one after the other while maintaining our daily life. So go easy on yourself. give yourself some like slack and some patience and some leeway. Understand that we're not monks in a monastery. We weren't given a roadmap for this. This is not something we knew we'd be doing. And here we are. And we're just doing the best we can with what we got, what we've learned, what we know. And the cards can sometimes feel like they're stacked against us. But again, I remind you, this wouldn't be happening to you if you couldn't handle it. It's like right now, I think a lot of people are meant to go through this like rapid metamorphosis because I have a feeling, and maybe you can, I'm curious your thoughts as well. Feel free to comment below. Feel free to like engage with me whenever you feel appropriate. So I'm asking you, do you feel this as well? I think that within this next year and a half, you're going to see like an unprecedented amount of people finding themselves going through something kind of very similar. But they're not going to have the foundation as you. You know, for a lot of us, we're kind of familiar with healing and looking at ourselves and change and all this stuff that comes along with this ascension, this grand awakening, where imagine what it's like when like millions or billions of people start going through it in a very sort of intense, accelerated way, maybe kind of how you are now, but they have no context for it. The world is going to need people who have been there and done that and are familiar. But in order to be that, you have to be that, basically. Reminds me of Napoleon Hill. He wrote that real well-known Think and Grow Rich. And, you know, before he wrote that book, he met Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew Carnegie said, you should write a book. You should go around and interview everybody you can get a hold of who's very successful and try to identify what made them successful. And he did. He spent, I think, 2 or 3 years gathering information and talking to people like Andrew Carnegie, like these real high-level people. And he wrote this, he was like writing this amazing book. And then he found himself where his life was just falling apart. At one point, he was even being hunted down for it. I forgot why, but he was being hunted down and like people wanted to kill him and he had to go hide out in someone's basement for a period of months away from his family, away from town. And one day he got so restless from being cooped up, he just chose to kind of courageously go outside and walk around this like the schoolyard. And he was walking around the schoolyard and he was asking himself, like, why is this happening? I did what I felt called to do. He had a calling to write this book that just kind of came out of the mouth of Andrew Carnegie. It was an inspired sort of like wink from the universe that this is your purpose, Napoleon, and he did it. So he wondered, why is this happening? Why am I struggling so hard? And then he heard this voice, which he's heard only a couple other times in his life. This otherworldly type of voice said something along the lines of, I'm going to paraphrase here, in order to write this book properly, you have to know what it's like to walk the path. It was something like that. And that's the case for us. If you are meant to be a guide for people, you need to know what it's like to be in the trenches. You need to know what it's like to be balancing your process while maintaining your life. You need to know what it's like, the challenges that people are going to face. It's like a training I think a lot of us are going through. But anyway, I'd be curious to if you feel that too. Do you have that sense? I think for a long time, the world has been kind of building to this sort of period of condensed transformation. We are now like entering with greater and greater speed. And whether you want to call it a timeline shift or a period of personal and collective evolution, I don't think the title matters. What matters is the fact that you're in it. I'm in it. We're in it. Something is happening. Something is brewing. Something is building. And it's coming on stronger and stronger and stronger each day. And as it happens, as it does, as it rises, as we ascend, more and more and more and more of our shadow is coming up to be cleansed, to get out of the way because it doesn't resonate. It's not compatible with the people, the versions of ourselves we are growing and blossoming into. So remember that. Remember, you don't need to judge yourself. You don't need to criticize yourself. You don't need to beat yourself up because you're having a hard time. Because there are days where your ego and your insecurities and your shadow gets the best of you and takes you over here and there. It's okay. It's part of it. It's not an easy thing you're doing here.